right, everybody, welcome back to Shoulda Boosted. This is episode 39. I am one of the hosts, Malorian, also known as Brian, and with me is Iain, Community Killer. How's it going?
Good. How about yourself? I'm having a great weekend, and we are live on the YouTube channel right now. So if anybody wants to come in and chat in future recordings, come on in, because I do have an open chat that people come in and ask questions and engage with us.
Now, we're going to be talking today about our Alberta War Table War Machine and invitational thing that we've been doing. If you remember last time we did the coverage, we had Andrew here to talk with us because, obviously, he did all right. And wouldn't you know it, we have another guest here today. Andrew, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good, thanks.
You got to stop doing so well. You got to share that spotlight. Jeez.
We were just talking about, it sounds like next month you might have an opportunity to have someone else on.
So the event we're going to be covering this time is going to be a caster swap. So this is basically like a poor man's Who's the Boss. You basically make your nice small list, and then when you get there, you swap casters. So lots of interesting stuff to go and maybe try and do. But maybe try and talk about like what you were thinking about. Iain, what did you take and why?
Oh, my list was, I was being really nice to my opponents, and I decided to take Berka or Borka 2. And it was all about the list construction. I ran Borka which has a pretty respectable amount of battle group points, which is plus 27. I ran 2 Earthborn Dire Trolls, a Rune Bearer, 2 units of Battle Bears, and 2 units of Northkin Fire Eaters, which they're all around pretty not bad. Like it's not a skew one super hard way or another. I'm just kind of putting really good toolbox together for whatever I get. So see if I can crank something to 11.
And was that tech with Berka?
It counters most of Berka's tech, which is pretty hilarious because their feat, like, his feat is like, I'm going to give everybody stealth. And I'm going to give everybody, if I get hit and I don't die, or if I get hit, they get stationary unless they're immune to cold. Well, I made my list in Storm of the North, so all my infantry is immune to cold, and my Earthborn Dire Trolls are also immune to cold, and my ranged attacks are all sprays, so I don't really care about the stealth aspect.
Now, there's a couple of different ways you could build your list, right? Like just taking like a crappy caster or something that counters itself or something that's confusing. Why did you think that your strategy was the right way to go?
Oh, I don't think it was. I don't think it was. I think it was, hey, not many people get the opportunity to play Berka, and not only that, but people are going to be handing out dog shit for casters. So maybe we should give the opportunity to some players to be able to play some strong casters. So I mitigated it as much as I could and gave people a good large base caster.
Nice. All right. Well, Andrew, how about yourself? What did you take and why?
So I picked Amon, High Elegant Amon Adraza, his full, very long name there. And so I had a very different take than Iain. So I guess Iain was trying to be nice, and I don't know how much I actually buy that, but sure, Iain. I was not. So I tried to pick initially the weakest caster in the Protectorate stable. And what I found is that at 35 points, I really, Protectorate casters are generally pretty self-sufficient. They can play back safely. And there wasn't, I was really looking for an opportunity to make my opponents make mistakes. And so the reason I picked him on is he's super squishy. So he's 16 defense, 14 armor, which means he doesn't take a hit very well. He has to play in the mid-ground. So unlike most Protectorate casters, you can kind of stand 14 to 16 inches back. If he wants, especially at 35 points, he needs to be in the middle, right behind his front lines to contribute appropriately. His key spells are Synergy. And I figured the chances of running into folks playing multiple lights in a way to maximize Synergy was probably very small in this format. So Synergy seemed, if not a dead spell, a pretty likely to focus for like maybe a +1/+1 on a single jack, something like that.
I got a comment on that one because with Amon, quote unquote, Amon being the weakest caster in your stable, and it's a Synergy caster. Okay, well, I believe you.
Well, it's an interesting thing. All right, so the Fioras I think are typically weaker, Fiora 1 and Fiora 2 in particular, but they're also immune to fire. So I strongly wanted to lean on Adjudicator, and just automatically discounting its 2 best weapons for a caster assassination didn't seem great. Fiora 3 is a legitimately decent caster, especially at small points, so I didn't want to give my opponent that. Other potentials for worse casters were incredible. So Durst is, I think, doesn't have very much personal output, doesn't do much for his battle group outside of feature,
right?
but is super hard to kill. So yeah, Amon is this weird combination of needs to play in the front, is squishy, has some good spells, but I didn't think that they would be at their maximum potential at 35 points.
It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
My other option was actually Malekith that I was going to hand people for from Protectorate and just make a fire immune list and be like, okay, here you go.
Yeah, I thought about that, but I'm frankly not a huge fan of the fire immune models in the Protectorate stables. So pretty much if you play Malekith, you're going to want to lean on Incinerators, and I just personally don't like Incinerators.
Okay.
So yeah, long story short, I wanted them to play forward with a caster with 14 armor. I wanted them to play with, he's really heavy into battle group spells. Hopefully they'd have smaller minimal battle groups to kind of lean on that. And I figured, he doesn't have an opportunity to really provide personal output. He's got no ranged weapon. He's got a 2-inch reach weapon. But outside of that, like he's not killing anything himself, really.
Convection is so good, though.
Yeah, exactly. Convection is his very impressive, POW 12 AoE nuke. And if he's not casting that, he's probably good. So yeah, I just figured he was, situationally in a bad place. So I wanted to go with him.
Awesome. All right, well, let's jump into it. Round 1, Ian, who'd you face and how'd it go?
So how we're talking about, just briefly, we're talking about Morgan playing Andrew in the first round of this month. Well, actually, I played against Morgan in the first round of February. I ended up getting Lilith 1 and swapped for Baraka, which was super good because when I found that out, I'm like, I can triple fire breathe off an assault, which was really, really good. And then when you add pincushion to it, you actually 2-shot heavies with fire breathers, which I was able to. It was a triple hit, so I assaulted in, I sprayed with the assault, and then you gain gunfighter through Lilith. Sorry, it was Lilith 2, not Lilith 1. Then I get gunfighter, so I can do my actual melee attack as a gunfighter attack because I was within half an inch, which are boosted attack and boosted damage rolls. And then I get an additional shot because of feet. So, and I have gunfighter, so I can do the additional shot. So I get 3 sprays out of 1 guy. And with pincushion, it hits so hard because it's add a die, drop a die for attack and damage rolls on ranged attacks. Thanks, Dolly. So it was I think I almost 2-hit an Angelius on the first spray. Yeah, it was gross. And then I ended up putting 2 sprays into Baraka, or 3 or 6 sprays into Baraka, and almost killed him. And he ended up moving forward and doing a little bit of attrition work. And then I was able to get Lilith onto his caster because he only had 2 boxes left and 0 camp. So it was one of those it was a good game, and Morgan's a great opponent, and I look forward to playing him in the future. So, but yeah, that swap I think was the strongest caster swap that I got with Lilith 2 in my list.
And I'm sure in the Legion's players' eyes, they're like, oh, this is the worst caster. This is going to do nothing for you. But it did a lot for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like being able to spray 3 times and pincushion on an already boosted roll, it was pretty gross. I also had a really huge advantage on table side because I had 2 big continuous fire sites that Andrew's suit was super salty about when in our game. Mm-hmm. So I was able to just dip in and then get out to get my continuous fire and my fire breathers.
Nice. All right. So you got the first one there, Andrew. Round 1, who you got and how to go?
Yeah, so I got Michael round 1, and he gave me pre-CID Gary 1. So Gareth. which is not a caster I've ever seen on the table before. So I was really appreciative that all my opponents this tournament gave me their lists in advance, so I could have a chance to go through, review the casters, kind of cover the game plan, and vice versa. I think it would have been a much more frustrating experience if I would have had to show up to the game night with no idea of who the caster was going to be and what they were going to do. So I do appreciate
actually all my opponents did the same thing too. It was really
made
good.
It a much better experience.
Yeah, because it kind of gives you prep time. Like if there's any weird interactions where you're like, oh my God, this is obviously super broken, or oh my God, this is something that we can't really deal with. How do we figure it out? And we were able to go through that pre-game before anything else happened.
Yeah. So, he's effectively a super solo, and I don't play super solos particularly well. He's super fast, but he's pretty squishy. So I wasn't really sure what to do with him. I figured I'd just shove him in the corner somewhere and play the rest of my list, lead heavily on the Judicator I brought. So he brought 4 lights. So I immediately felt like an idiot with my plan.
Synergy?
Yeah, exactly. So mobility and synergy on a Chimera, Griffin, Harpy, and Siren seems really good.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He also brought 2 mechanics, so he's gonna get the +2 strength or the power up. He had Dawn Guard Sentinels, a min unit with a standard bearer, and he brought a Trident, because of course, how can you not if you're a Ret player? I actually talked to him briefly before this tournament, and I tried very hard to convince him to take 2 Tridents. I think if he had, he probably would have won the thing, but he didn't. So we swapped pretty quickly, and it was, it's really interesting. It's funny how dominant single pieces can be if they're self-reliant. Mm-hmm. So for me, the key piece, and I didn't go over the rest of my list earlier, but it was the Judicator, it was Eyeless Gade, it was Sevi 0 with the Redeemer. So that's the rate of fire 3, 16-inch, power strength 12 inaccurate rockets, and then Visigoth Roven and his Honor Guard. So Shield Guard, Weapon Masters with 8 boxes, armor 16, kind of as my infantry bump unit. And immediately the whole game kind of turned on his Trident versus my Judicator and who would be more efficient in putting out damage. I was pretty concerned with the Trident being able to kind of frankly kill anything in my list, but it's almost impossible to shut down at 35 points. You don't have, I obviously could have fired some rockets into it, but it's hard to hit. It's entirely tough. There's no way to damage it incrementally, right? It's fully functional to the last box. And if I'm putting rockets into it, I'm not threatening any of the 4 lights who are closing and then have a potentially to get a synergy chain on my Judicator and kill it in one round. So pretty scary stuff. Long story short, I kind of managed to trivially remove the Dawn Guard Sentinels. I was lucky enough to go forward, so it gave me kind of map control. On my far right side, there was a large forest, and Gade was able to kind of dip in and out of that forest, taking sniper shots on the Dawn Sentinels. So I'd pick off 1 or 2 with a couple boosted rocket rolls. Occasionally, I think I got 1 with a spray as my Judicator came down the middle of the map. Gade kind of caught anyone that was getting close enough to charge or countercharge with, I think he needed 6s or 5s to hit. Auto 1 point of damage, no tough or anything like that.
Pay attention to how he speaks about Gade, guys, because I'm going to comment on that later.
Thanks, Ian. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
He's still bad, and I stand by that, but I can't find anything else to put in that space.
Later, when we talk about a different game.
And so what ended up happening is I had kind of envisioned my games with me just assassinating Amon, but he was playing pretty cagey, and what he would do with Amon is keep him at 15.1 inches away so the Judicator couldn't walk forward and use flamethrowers. And at defense 16, I'm almost certain not to hit him on. So then I'm looking at realistically somewhere between 33% to 40% with the second deviations blast damage at POW 10. And even with POW 10 blast damage, if he's got a few focus to overboost at armor 14, I shouldn't be doing any damage to him on. So I couldn't really go for an assassination, and I was forced to play like a long attrition game. So I started pumping rockets into the lights, 1 or 2 at a time. I was kind of successful. Chipping him down. At one point, he, I think, made a mistake and committed 2 of his lights to clear out one of my zones. Did allow him to start scoring on a large circle zone to my right, but I was able to immediately contest it again, and bringing those 2 models forward to clear out Roven and his bodyguards allowed the Judicator to walk forward and kill both his lights. So on that turn, which I believe was bottom of 3, he went from having 4 lights on the field to having 2. And once he's down to 2 lights, I feel like his synergy chain can't get high enough to kill the Judicator. And I started just really aggressively bullying him, which was good. However, on the other side of the table, I had put Sebi Zero and my Redeemer and my Choir, and his Trident was coming up that side and just shooting down anything I had. So out of desperation, I threw my Redeemer into combat, battled with his Power Strength 13 base up to 15 mace to try and beat on the Trident. I got some significant damage in, but didn't kill it. Took about 15 boxes off. And then it was actually higher than average rolls for sure. But completely forgot that just being in combat doesn't prevent him from shooting. So he just reached out past the Redeemer. I think he put a POW 14 hit into me in melee just for funsies, and then just shot past me and took some shots at my Choir members and at Sebi Zero. Sebi Zero was really lucky with Defense 15 to be able to dodge, but I think that would have been a turning point if he would have been able to kill me. He wasn't, and so I ended up attritioning him down badly enough that he thought he had a 50-50 chance. He had to turn his Trident kind of about 90 degrees, and he had to slam one of his own models. I see. My biggest problem in this game is I didn't know what to do with Gary 1. I was trying to just keep him out of the way, but it really feels weird. I don't know about you, Ian, but I felt this real strong urge to play with these new casters that I was given, like to get them to do some sort of work and kind of enjoy the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to sit back with Gary just in the far and play it safe. And so I was kind of walking forward and taking pistol shots, which was good. It helped me clear up some Arcanists, let me start scoring one of his flags, but also left me kind of exposed because Tridents, as you know, when Tridents charge, they go real far.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, so he had a potential to slam one of his own lights over Gary. A 1 would have not hit me. A 2 would have missed me. A 3 would have missed me, but a 4, 5, or 6 would have slammed over me. And even though Gary 1 has stealth, he could have gotten within 5 inches and just unloaded on me. Now, without the knockdown, he's likely to miss, so he doesn't want to go for that. So he figured it was about a 50-50, well, it was a 50-50 chance effectively to get that slam distance, and then it's kind of trivial. He ended up not taking that 50-50 target assassination. I'm sure it's slightly lower than that when you factor in, you can double one's the slam or something, but he didn't take the 50-50, and I just ground him down instead. So he was playing against a Judicator. He had no real way to take it off the table. So as soon as assassination was off as a win condition, I don't think he had a chance. He eventually, out of desperation, charged Amon and one of his lights into the Judicator, did about 30 points of damage, which is a little below average, but he shouldn't have killed it. And then I trivially removed Amon, I think, in a single punch. So
nice.
Yeah.
Now, a format question for you guys. Now, the event that we played before this was Brawl Machine, so no huge bases. Now we're a little bit bigger, 35 points, and now we're seeing Judicators and Tridents. Did you feel that you were kind of missing having that kind of like ban list from Brawl Machine, or was it kind of nice to get back to the huge bases?
I didn't really take advantage of any of it. The only thing I took advantage of was taking doubles of things, which, I mean, it was okay. I like Brawl Machine for the format that it is, so I don't really have any problem with one way or the other on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard for someone that did pretty well in the tournament. It's hard for me to say like, no, I didn't like it. Obviously, I enjoyed winning, and it helped me win because the Judicator is such a strong piece. You could make an argument, and I would probably be convinced of the fact that like a 32 point Colossal with a strong range game, what is it, 60 some boxes off the top of my head, is just too difficult to take down in small points. And I could see that for sure.
Unless you start skewing for an armor, like if you're running 2 list, it would have been completely different. And
that's
single list, it's much more difficult.
It's so hard to be a generalist, and that like one of the easier ways to deal with something like that is to lean into internal list synergies, which is very hard to have without picking your own caster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I almost think like at 49 points with the tournament that's upcoming, I've got no problem with it. But yeah, if you ask me, was the Judicator a little too strong in this? I mean, probably. I played 4 rounds, and no spoilers. No one ever took more than half a Judicator boxes off in any game in any circumstance.
I think I took you down to spoiler. I played him in the 3rd round. I think I took you down to 22 or 20.
Something like that. I think you got
Yeah.
a 6 over on the second side. But yeah,
Yeah.
I never felt super in danger at any point.
Yeah.
All right. Just wondering. Jumping to round 2, Ian, who'd you play and how'd it go?
I played against Michael McAvoy, and he played Grail, and I played Borka. Grail's fun. Grail's got lots of interesting stuff. I think the biggest thing about the Grail is that I don't play Circle, and I think I've only played Circle a handful of times. It was one of those cagey back and forth games. It went very, very close till the very end, and I ended up getting assassination with Grail herself or himself onto his caster. It wasn't super attrition-y and it wasn't super grindy. It was just a good, solid scoring, sandpapering back and forth until an opportunity came kind of game. You know those opportunities when you're like, I'm waiting for my opponent to have to advance with their caster to try and do something, and you're just sitting there with your caster and be like, you have to come forward. If you don't come forward, you're going to lose. And they just ended up having to ring Berica in, and I got one troll and Grail on him, and ended up just hitting him so hard with Weapon Master attacks until he died.
Okay, just a nice attrition match back and forth, just like who's going to blink first type thing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Again, all the battle reports I played are all on my channel, so if you guys are curious, you guys can pop on there and see them in their entirety. But yeah, it was just a really good, lighthearted attrition match. We ended up playing at like 10 in the morning on a Saturday while he was in between classes or in between meetings. So it was really convenient timing there. Again, Michael McAvoy is a solid player, and he was kind of confused on why I was giving out Borka, and he loved it. He probably did, out of any opponent, I think he used Borka to the most effect than out of anyone else.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew, how about you? Round 2, who you got? How'd it go?
I played Chris Dancox, and he gave me, wait for it, Berica.
Yeah, you did.
So when Ian tells you that he picked Berica out of the goodness of his heart, either him and one of the other top players in our meta both just had the exact same moment of merciful weakness, or maybe Berica's not that bad to give your opponent. I don't know.
There's only two things that go against Berica. One is Fury 5, which means really small control area, and you potentially dead feet.
What do you mean potentially? It is a dead feat.
It's a dead feat. It's a dead feat.
It's a dead feat. It's Fury 5. He has to play in the forefront. He gives no armor buff. He gives no speed buff. I mean, he actually contributes almost no spells at all to any sort of matchup, unless you particularly like countercharge, I guess.
How's having the strongest melee output out of any caster in this entire format?
Yeah. That's definitely pretty solid. I don't disagree.
He's a heavy and a half,
but he provides nothing to your battle group. He provides no threat extension. Like I definitely see the case for just giving your opponent a super solo and daring them to use it, because I was definitely too gung shy to use Berica in this matchup. I played him relatively safe. So Chris had a very similar list to Ian's. He had Berica. He had 2 units of Fire Eaters because, man, they're good. They're just really good.
They're super generalists. Like they just get work done.
They'll get infantry. They'll clear infantry. They'll put serious damage onto a heavy. They'll kill solos without a problem. Sometimes they'll kill themselves, but that's the nature of
I'm real good at that.
Playing with fire.
I'm real good at
that. So he had those. He had one Earthborn. And I was a little confused by this at first because they are a little pillow-fisted at like power strength 15.
Yep.
But then I realized I'm going through. I'm like, okay, immune to everything, right? So my Judicator immediately. It's always it wants to threaten with its long-range weapons, force you to close, and then finish out with its fists. But taking both my flamethrowers off the table and just saying you'll never be able to use these against the number one threat in the list against the Judicator is pretty terrifying. The armor goes pretty high up. I think he's 19 base.
22.
18.
20 with beside an obstruction or a wall.
And then it'll go to 22 with Fortify.
Yeah.
Yeah, because why wouldn't you put a Mons Fortify on him?
Exactly.
So really good. He had that. He had a brawler. Is that the right word? The troll with stagger, the troll light.
I think so. I'm
I don't
not
have his
100
list in
percent sure
front of
now.
me. Yeah. So he had a troll light that had stagger, and then he had a fire troll. So kind of a weird battle group, or at least it seemed weird to me initially. I kind of got it as the game went on, and then he just kind of had a smattering. He had a stone or whatnot. And anyway, so what ended up happening with this is I was terrified that Earthborn, who heavily out-threaded me and who my 2 rockets a turn at rat 2 wasn't really going to hit, that this thing was just going to kind of come up to the adjudicator and just smash it. But with power 15, he really needed the fire trolls +2 melee damage buff to go up to armor strength 16 to do enough damage, I thought, to have a chance of actually one-shotting the adjudicator on a charge. So I had obviously the advantage of the range game because outside his fire eaters, he doesn't really have a ranged game. So what I ended up doing, long story short, is working really hard. And I was lucky enough there was a cloud in the middle of the map where Rovin's eyeless sight, he can grant eyeless sight to the adjudicator. I could see through the cloud. And I just went out of my way to, as quickly as possible, target the fire troll, knowing that if I killed it, he couldn't give +2 to the Earthborn, and then I wasn't really in danger anymore, and I could kind of bully it. And that's exactly what ended up happening. So turn 2, both the Redeemer with Sevi 0, which puts out, again, effectively 3 rockets that they hit their power strength 15 boosted, and the 2 Judicator rockets that come in at POW 17 boosted if they hit with Divine Inspiration. And I just fired them all into the fire troll and managed to get lucky. Depends how you define lucky. Kill it, and then I wasn't afraid of any melee invasions. And it ended up becoming more of a scenario-based game where I was pushing heavily for attrition, using the flamethrowers and rockets to pick off bears and fire eaters kind of one at a time. And he was really trying to go wide to the flanks and score, because the key thing about my list is having so many points invested in the Adjudicator. I'm a very centrally based list. And if you force the Adjudicator, for example, to go left or right, it has a really hard time repositioning itself. And that can be the end of it. I also knew that getting charged by multiple targets could still kill the Adjudicator. So, for example, if a unit of bears came out of ambush in conjunction with the Earthborn, would have probably killed the Adjudicator. So I had to play it heavy to the middle, which meant my flanks were really exposed to ambushing bears. And I had to figure a way for him not to score like a quick 3 or 4 points and then finish it up on the following turn. So it ended up being kind of a trade back and forth where I was lucky enough to get ahead on the attrition and ultimately grind him down to nothing, and then eventually kill him on when he was forced to bring him forward, try to a last desperate value play.
Nice. All right, so 2 wins for each of you. I have another format question for you, which is maybe a good time because you're just talking about scenario. Now, in Brawl Machine, they have scenarios that are designed because you have a smaller list. You can't really capture these wide, regular scenarios of a steamroller. But in this 35 one, we went with the full regular steamroller scenarios. Did you find that, like, oh, wow, this is now I have to cover so much area? Or did you kind of wish that, like, it was fine, or you would want to have the old Brawl Machine ones? How to go with that?
I like the regular format, the regular steamroller format scenarios. I don't think that the problem is that if you change the format, like the army composition, any huge base basically can contest so many things all at once that it wouldn't be okay.
Was that your thought too, Andrew?
No, it wasn't. But I definitely agree. If I could get Adjudicator able to maybe to toe into a central zone and then kind of a square
and
zone,
a flag.
yeah, exactly. So anything like that, that's very powerful. But the Adjudicator is speed 5, and so that's not really something. I think it's much more likely that you're going to have to deal with kind of like deep heavies than a Colossal making it onto your opponent's side of the map to start contesting multiple zones, which is typically how that would happen. For me, the scenarios, I would say that I felt a little bit safer. So in Brawl Machine, the fact that the game's over when you get 4 compared to 5 is a big difference. So you can do the quick math and figure, hey, what is the chance that if my opponent's going, top of 3, they're going to get 4v5 on me? And just my personal experience is I was a lot more afraid in Brawl Machine of that kind of rapid surprise scoring where your opponent is picking up multiple points. And I also found that with Adjudicator and with Menoth in particular, we don't have a large number. And frankly, in this list, I have no Pathfinder options. Frequently, I was running into situations where there was obviously a central piece of terrain, but if it's an obstacle and if there's another forest or series of forests, or God help us, even a couple walls, in your deployment or turn one at the latest, I'm having to allocate out my forces to say, okay, there's a zone on the left hand. I've got 2 units. One's a choir, one's a 3-man utility, character unit. I need to make sure each one of those units are on each side, so I have the potential to score or run to contest. And if I make a mistake in that deployment or turn one in this small points format where there's no Pathfinder, I effectively lose the game. And so there was multiple times in this tournament where I was making a decision, on turn 2, ensuring that I can run a choir member 10 inches or 12 inches, where I have to tow a zone. And if I don't do that, if that choir member gets picked off, I think I just automatically lose the game. Or if I'm pushing Adjudicator, let's say, left, I have no opportunity realistically to reposition it right. So I have to be very careful with my placements, or I just automatically lose on scenario. That's at least how it felt to me. And so it felt, even though it didn't feel like it had the potential to be as explosive as it did in Brawl Machine, I felt like the scenario threat was liver in this format because you had so few pieces. You're playing the same scenarios that you would with 75 at 35. If I lost a contesting piece, it's very likely, and let's say they got a solo on a flag and I lose my contesting piece, they're probably scoring their turn, my turn for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, basically.
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to touch base with these interesting format things. Iain, round 3, who you got, even though you told us, and how to go?
Andrew's way better at doing this. So you know what? I'm going to let Andrew do this. So Andrew and I I'll do the introduction, but Andrew and I ended up playing in round 3, and we considered that the pinnacle. That's the winning game of this event. And whatever Matt has to say, I don't care. That was the championship game of it. And all that was after that was just a concession by Matt, because Andrew did a great job with this month.
Ian's words, not mine, Matt.
Yeah, my words, I'll own them. Andrew and I end up playing, and I get Amon, which is, I think Amon's a good caster. Anytime that you have a synergy cast with mobility, solid piece. However, I didn't have the hitting power to be able to clear out the Adjudicator, and that Adjudicator is carrying Andrew through the last 3 weeks and into the week that we played, and I try to piece trade back and forth with him, and I make some really, really bad plays. I made a couple really bad plays. One was with the double bears on the right side and not
hold on.
them.
Let's slow it down, because this is a story that needs to be told properly.
Oh, go for it. Okay, you say yours. Also, I need to say something. When I get a model that somebody says is really bad, okay, and I keep hearing about how good it does in different games, and Elias Gade is apparently the worst goddamn model in the game by Andrew's rating system, but it does amazingly good every single time that I see it on the table. So, and every time I hear about it doing work, and I called him out on it on this first battle report he had mentioned, and for some reason I didn't hear it in his last game about what it did. So,
I'm sure he killed a thing or two.
All right, Andrew, tell us the story.
All right, so same deal as with Chris, because Iain and Chris are effectively playing the same list with one key difference. So instead of bringing the Brawler and the Fire Troll, Ian's bringing a second Earthborn.
Basher. It's a Basher, by the way.
Basher, thank you. Holy smokes, I'm just making names up and seeing if
That's okay.
Me. It's a Basher, yeah, because he actually managed to stagger the Adjudicator on one of my turns. And so having no initials, and then having to decide if I'm going to come in, walk in, have 3 buy attacks, and then just eat a retaliatory bear unit charge or back up, it feels really bad to take half your points in your entire list and just run them. But I had to do that in that particular turn. So anyway, yeah, the only difference between Iain and Chris's list for me was the 2 Earthborns instead of the Fire Troll and the Basher. So from my perspective, this comes down to the same calculation though, because everything else is more or less the same. how can Iain kill the Judicator in a single round without letting me retaliate? And for me, because he doesn't have the fire troll to boost up the damage on one Earthborn, I think the only way he can do it is if he brings in and hits with 2 Earthborns over the course of one round. Gets 2 charges off, or God forbid, walks into with both. He might be able to one round the Judicator, and then I lose the game. So my goal is, no matter how aggressive Iain gets, and Iain gets to go first, so he takes a lot of table space right down the middle. He has the opportunity. I need to keep backing away until I get a charge or get a crippling attack on one of those Earthborns. Then I can start bullying. Now, it's important to mention before we start this discussion, though,
Please tell me
this
it's about the
map
table.
is awful.
Oh,
It is
man,
the worst
I don't
map
think
I've ever played on. In fact, I actually asked Iain if he specifically created this map just to screw with me.
You guys can check the timestamps of when we started that game. There's literally no way that I could have actually done that, despite how bad Andrew. Wait, didn't we select it together, or did I select it before you showed up?
You selected first before I showed up, but that's
Okay.
Suspicious.
No, actually, I do. Anytime that somebody ever wants to call me out on that, I actually have. There's timestamps when you select map and versus rolling and stuff like that, and I make sure that it's fully transparent. So
let me give a very brief overview of this. The bottom half of the map has 2 burning earth clouds.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so good.
All my infantry is effectively incapable of going through them because obviously fire on armor 12 to armor 16 miles is really bad.
Yeah.
Plus, it has a forest, a obstacle, and a wall in such a way that I am actually pretty sure I literally cannot move my colossal.
You lose if you take that side of the table.
There's one narrow path going up on the left side of the map where maybe I could move my colossal, but he has no ability to shift at all to the right. Just automatically, I have one path straight forward. That's all I can do with them. The top has a giant forest in the middle, or just outside in the middle of the deployment, which means my units, none of which have Pathfinder, with the exception of the Judicator, obviously, are going to have to make a decision in deployment what size they deploy and will not have the capacity to redeploy. Iain is bringing in 2 ambushing units, so he can contest whichever side I under resource. And even though I am going second, which means I should technically get to pick the side, I have no option to pick the bottom, which means those 2 burning rubble clouds are going to give Iain super easy opportunities to light his fire eaters for free, in effect. Yeah. Without having to risk those damage rolls. So, it was pretty shocking to know that I felt I was very disadvantaged by the map, which is the nature of the Protectorate to a certain extent, right? If you play a faction without Pathfinder, you can't complain about forests too much. But with this low points format, and only having, for example, 2 units, it's just, you have so little, and it's so difficult. So anyway, long story short, I ended up picking the top of the map because that was my only realistic option. My Judicator came right down the middle, trying to take up that footprint of the forest, so I could reallocate to either side of the Judicator the rest of my forces. I ended up going pretty light, on my my right side. So in that side, I put only the choir and Rovan and Co. And then I put Sevi Zero and, technically another member of the choir, but Sevi Zero primarily going to the other side. And so what ended up happening was, Iain, you ambushed both your bears as well.
Yeah.
And so as we were going forward and trading initial shots, and Iain was kind of eating the odd rocket deviation or 2, Iain had a choice, top of 2. Does he bring his bears into my under-resourced side that is currently covered by 1 character unit, Rovan and Co., and try and overwhelm them? Or does he go and put both the bears on my strong side and try and just break my army strength to strength?
Yeah, which was a stupid idea, dumb idea, shouldn't have done it, and I did it. That's what I did. And honestly, it was because I wanted to see somebody run Sloan, but at the same time, no, it was a really bad idea because I should have layered the bears going into his backfield, which I didn't. And if I would have, I probably would have gotten some really, really juicy charges in on turn 3, and really eaten up his backfield, which would have crippled him from contesting the right side, and he would have been in this weird left side, right side with the Judicator kind of situation, because I would have cleared out left side with the Earthborn because they were going right up center, and I had them at speed 9 with mobility. So it was that was my misplay on that one.
Yeah, so on one side we have Rovan and Co, which is 2 weapon masters and a mage against 3 fire eaters. That was kind of in that zone, currently duking it out. He could have put 1 unit of bears in there, overwhelm me, and just start scoring that zone every turn, and I would have had to effectively run my Judicator into that side. It was the only chance I could have contested it, actually held the contest. But instead, he tries to play it clever, and so he ambushes both bears on the other side, where I have Sevi Zero, a Redeemer, the Judicator, and Borka. And what happens is, instead of kind of even trying to... So Iain, even doing this, could have tried to threat overload me. I made sure to stay outside of his charge range. And so Iain decided to take his first unit of bears and run them into base-to-base contact with Sevi Zero, the Redeemer, and some choir members. It's not a bad idea. The bears are relatively hard to kill. He gets a couple good toughs. It might go well for him. And the following turn, they're going to eat all those units alive. But what he did is he took his second unit of bears and deployed them like 25 inches away, closer to his side of the zone, where they were completely away from any sort of threat. So on the following turn, I have it's bottom of 2 on my turn, where he's run on top of 2. So I know that as long as I just put a single piece in one of these zones, he can't score it, which is fine. And then I get to turn Borka, Sevi Zero, and a light Warjack, the Redeemer, and they all just get to pound on these bears. And so Borka, who was kind of out and ahead of my army, kind of trying to threaten back some of the fire eaters, walks backwards, kills 2 bears trivially, to be honest. I think I saw 3 or 4 fury. The Redeemer knocks the last one on the head, and suddenly, Iain's down a unit of bears, which is like 20%, 25% of his hitting power for no gain, which was a little crazy.
Yeah, that was a really dumb decision. And then the following turn, you did move your Redeemer up, and that's when I'm like, okay, let's see what these 2 Earthborn can do with synergy and all this hitting power that I don't have. I put one of them is able to walk into melee of the Judicator. The other one has to charge.
If I may, Iain, let me step back because there's a key point. So Iain kind of gave up on getting the dual charges. He charged one of his Earthborns forward to kill a couple of Rovan's bodyguards that were just in front of the Judicator. The other one back. So effectively he said, look, see what your Judicator can do, and I'm going to get a charge with 1 Earthborn. So I felt like I won the trade there, which felt really good. But what happened is he had placed the Earthborn just outside of my walk range. And obviously I had no chance. It was a fortified Earthborn, no chance of realistically killing it with rockets and flamethrowers. Well, flamethrowers wouldn't even work.
Yeah.
So I had to trample my Judicator. So instead of getting 5 attacks at power strength 24, I only get 2 attacks, which makes the math a little bit more dicey. I think it's probably a fair statement. And
that is a fair statement, yeah.
Now, to be fair, power strength 24 with divine inspiration is a lot of damage still. But long story short is I was kind of banking on killing the Earthborn, and I would have actually killed it because I'd kind of put some chip damage on it earlier as well with the Redeemer. And I did have some follow-up attacks from other units, but
it's a good thing I snacked on those other 2 before that happened.
That's absolutely true. But I think I did 7 damage with the Redeemer this turn as well on it before I went in with the Judicator. But long story short is I rolled something like 3, 2, 2, 1. If I remember at the top of my head,
like that. Yeah, it was still like 10 damage, but it was like ugh.
It on like a few boxes, but I had killed it fine. But obviously he can heal. So the math was pretty heavily in my favor, being able to 1-round it. So suddenly, even though I kind of worked so hard to prevent him from getting 2 Earthborns, there's now nothing that stops him from just getting straight up 2 Earthborns on the Judicator. So I didn't feel good about that.
Well, it's a good thing that I didn't have enough hitting power to do it. I had some below average rolls on damage, but even with the below average rolls, I don't think it was going to be that big of a deal anyways to with the Judicator alive. Because I didn't roll super hot. It's actually not the worst rolling that I've got out of the Earthborn this month, but I'll tell more about that for the next round. But I ended up leaving the Judicator on like 20 or 22 boxes, and I was like, okay, that's pretty much game there. let's see what we can do. And then my last ditch effort was basically getting Amon onto Berica.
Yeah. So, long story short, the adjudicator in return did trivially remove both Earthborn. Let me just say how shockingly bad POW 15 is. If you don't have
it's so bad. It's so bad.
Having to do the math on whether or not you need to boost on like a heavy slamming into a colossal is just hot garbage.
Oh, it's so bad.
I felt a little silly. Now, obviously, you could have got hot dice and spiked it, but you didn't. So
that's what I was hoping for. I was like, all right, let's see. Like, you know what? If there's somebody I'm going to lose to, I'd like to lose against Andrew because he gets the opportunity to play Sloan next, which is going to be amazing for him.
So it's true, but the long story short here is I had two options. I could have played for scenario attrition and just beat Iain over the next 40 or 50 minutes because we weren't playing on clock.
Nope.
But I looked at Berica's stats and I realized that he is a beast. And I was very certain that Amon at full focus on a charge could not kill Berica. So I, instead of backing him up, which I'm kind of inclined to do as a protectorate player, I charged him forward, cleared out one of the last fire eaters, and kind of just stood right in front of him and just said like, "Hey, come at me, Amon."
Yeah, let's see if you can spike some dice, Iain.
And it was not
pretty
close.
Yeah,
no. I don't think you did. I think the only reason Iain did a single point of damage is because I let 2 points of damage through so I can get my +2 armor buff.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
He did kill Sevi Zero though, which was a warcaster standing next to Berica because he could flashing blade with Amon.
And
so
even
he did kill.
I was struggling to hit. Even then, I was like really struggling to hit.
Amon really wants to pick on something light in like the edge of his control group to get to up his synergy chain, but he's not someone that, even with power strength 14, he's not a weapon master. So
if you can go up and trip something that's outside of control, that's good. Like that's something that you can do. But if you can't trip something when it's out, or knock it down, knock it down either way. If you can't trip something outside of control, then because they overextended, he's dead. He's getting a headbutt and then he's going to get obliterated.
Yeah, and I mean, long story short, he had knocked down Berica. So before Berica even had to stand up on my turn, the adjudicator used a single flamethrower and killed him. Like it was, he's pretty in trouble.
No, it was 2 hits. I think it was 2 hits.
Yeah, fair enough.
So here's another format question for you. So normally the idea with like these who's the boss caster swap things is it's going to set you up for a low, like, wow, like what a silly thing that happened with that caster. I never thought of that interaction. Let's try this. But it's sounding like a lot of tactical games. Did you actually prefer that, or would you have rather had it like, who knows what random caster you would have gotten?
Silly, like some silly combination. The silly combinations, be damned, because when I did that in the first round, it was an overwhelming like blowout when you have something that synergizes crazy amount, like being able to do an additional attack and pin cushion and with the fire breathers. That was really, really gross display of power. So as neat as that is, I have something like that next round that I'm able to explain out.
I know you've never played it, Iain, but in the regular Who's the Boss, there's actually a chance you can literally just get a junior warcaster as your caster.
That's dumb. That's so dumb.
I mean, I would play that, and I would probably have fun, but that really seems like a drunk late night con game than something I would want to like make it a Friday evening off for.
What are your thoughts, Andrew? Did you prefer this, or do you think you'd like more wacky and like who knows you've gone with Who's the Boss?
Yeah, again, I think that I like probably a more serious game if I'm going to take time in my home life away from it. If I'm at a con on like 8 o'clock at night and our regular tournament games are over, I would love to play Who's the Boss. That sounds like a lot of fun. I've never played it, but yeah, I would have had less fun, I think, if I would have rolled a junior warcaster after I told my wife that I was going to be not available for 4 hours on a Thursday night.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the guys on the chat, actually Mike Bessam, it's like there's a reason certain casters aren't in a given faction. Yeah, there's a reason why.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go on to round 4 then. Iain, who'd you get and how'd it go?
I played against Brenton, who I played against last month in the Brawl Machine event, and he gave me Midas. Midas is a ton of fun, and this is probably the best game that I've had this year so far. We went to turn 7. We had a scenario score of 14-14. We traded so perfectly, symmetrically that that it was so touch and go back and forth. Like I would score 3, then he'd score 3, he'd get an attrition lead, then I'd get an attrition lead, and it was just so well rounded of a game that it's going to be really hard to top this game. The only reason why I ended up getting this is because I gave away my last heavy that had to be picked up by Borka, and I ended up putting Death March and Battle Lust on a unit of bears. And if you want to talk about something to kill a caster, that's how you do it. Andrew, could you imagine if I would have had a unit of battle bears with Battle Lust and Death March? Death March is +2 mat, which they're already mat
And
8
Vengeance.
with Gang.
Yeah.
And Vengeance, so they're mat 10 effectively, and they get an additional die. So Weapon Master, mat 10 bears. It was glorious.
Did you
It's not
mention
like
why
bears
he
use
decided to
full
give the other person, Midas? Was it because it was going to be so weird and hard to use, or was the plan there?
I don't know. I don't exactly know. He just wanted to play pigs and playing Midas. I think that's. I don't know why he in particular. I didn't ask him because a lot of the time when I ask people like, hey, I should have asked it pregame rather than postgame, but I don't think about it until at the end. So Brenton said it was the one last Fire Eater that was scoring the middle that he wanted to remove. And that's, he tried to throw a grenade at it. Brenton's actually in my chat right now. So he went up and tried to throw a grenade to kill it, and he didn't end up killing it, which caused me to allowed me to score while Berka was in the zone.
Nice.
Yeah. He wanted to bring up questions for Warcaster factions.
Oh, okay. Sure. Fair enough.
So that was the main reason.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I love it when the people that we're talking about is actually in my chat. That's the great thing about live streaming this.
All right, so you pick up that one, but now we're into the big final table. Andrew, how'd the glorious end go?
Well, it went pretty good, I gotta say. So I ended up playing against Matt, playing Kara Sloan, actually, which is really interesting. And I think not something I would have expected, because I think if you play War Machine and you have good senior players in your meta, you're probably very familiar with what Kara Sloan and a bunch of hunters can do, and it's quite terrifying. That's
terrible list.
Yeah, but it makes sense, I guess, in this, because what are the chances that your opponent is going to bring battle group ranged Warjacks or War Beasts? Probably relatively small. Unfortunately for Matt, I brought Adjudicator, which is neither of those things.
Yep.
And really advanced. Now, initially, I was way more excited about this matchup before I realized that all of Kara Sloan's spells, I guess I should have realized it earlier, are battle group specific. So I didn't get to use any of her spells on the Redeemer that was attached to 70. But still, so she ends up, and I just want to go over it really quickly, just to remind people what Kara Sloan does. She has the ability to boost all ranged attacks on all her battle group models for 1 turn. It's guided fire, costs 3, but she casts it. She has to pay for that out of hand. But then she has fire group, which gives +2 range for all ranged weapons in her battle group, and she casts that for free, along with an additional range shot per model on her feet. So effectively, if you do the math, Adjudicator's got 2 heavy range 10 flamethrowers, 2 range 14 rocket launchers, and Kara Sloan herself has a gun. So obviously, those are the 2 models that are affected. But if you do the math on those boosts, that's under feet, that's 7 ranged boosts that you get effectively for free, which seems really good under guided fire. Well, I guess you pay 3 for, and then a +2 to all of their ranges. So it really gives the Adjudicator the ability to reach out and touch things at range 16 with their heavy rockets, and to have a pretty good chance of economically boosting to hit. Because oftentimes, the Adjudicator, one of the big challenges is, do you just kind of accept that you're going to miss when you're firing at rat 1 to 2, and look to boost the blast damage, which is coming at a power strength 10, so still respectable? Or do you kind of gamble that with 4 dice drop the lowest, even at rat 1 or 2, you're going to hit? So that's very challenging. But Kara Sloan let me have both, which was really, really nice. Her other spells were kind of, I would say that they were I don't want to say they were wasted on the card, but they weren't super relevant. Refuge, because I was playing Creator's Might, I got to put upkeeps for free at the start of the game and upkeep them on turn 1. So I had Refuge on Carousel that turned out to be kind of cool.
It keeps her alive the entire time. Like, realistically, Refuge on her, it's a pretty winning spell.
Well, it's interesting because, unfortunately, she is super focus strapped, not having access to any of the Signar models that kind of make her play a little stronger, like Spire. But long story short, so here's what Matt brought. He brought Karasloan, which, sniper from hell, 2 Centurions, a Journeyman attached to a Charger, and a max unit of Storm Lances. So he's got He's going to give his opponent Karasloan, who's going to do some work with her sniper rifle, which is Weapon Master Power Strength 12, excuse me. But he's got a lot of heavy armor that's going to move slowly when it's the Centurions, but have a lot of threat if it's the Storm Lances, especially with their assault range 8. And, he's just hoping that Karasloan is not going to have any spells that affect the battle group, and he's going to be able to just kind of weather the storm with his heavy armor. Now, interesting thing for me is I was really concerned, and this is why when Brian asked earlier how I felt about Colossals or huge bases in the format, I was kind of willing to agree that maybe they're a little busted, because every game, including this one, came down to me doing a calculation, reviewing the list, and saying, what can one-round Adjudicator? And if I can eliminate those things on approach, I think I win the game. If I can't, I lose the game. So doing the math, the Centurions, even with mobility, only threat, I think it's 9 or 10 inches off the top of my head. They didn't have the ability to get on the Adjudicator in any reasonable or realistic way. So I could keep, kind of maybe backing the Adjudicator up and taking shots, wear them down. The only real threat were those Storm Lances. So they had the ability to either assault and then use Electroleaps off those assault to kill my choir members and put chip damage in, and any sort of chip damage is dangerous. Or if they were within 13 inches, they could get legitimate charges and potentially one-round the Adjudicator, because again, Karasloan doesn't give it any sort of armor buff. So Matt was lucky enough to go first, and he ran everything forward, but I think he made a critical mistake. There was a large forest in the center of the map, and he had 2 options. One, he throws everything as far forward as humanly possible. He goes balls to the wall, and he says, take your 1 round of shots, and then second round I'm coming at you. Or he tries to use that forest for cover and play it a little bit gingerly, try not to give me any shots, and the following turn come forward, take more of the territory, start scoring on that point, and still threatening that alpha for turn 3. And so I think what he ended up deciding to do is hide. So he tried to keep all of his Storm Lances just out of range of my guns. The ones that were in range were kind of hiding and kind of tiptoeing around a forest in the center. Now, Storm Lances don't have Pathfinder himself, so he knew he wasn't going to get any charges through that forest either. He was just trying to buy a turn. However, even though he was largely able to keep his guns, keep away from the Adjudicator's guns, Karasloan is fast. She's speed 6. She's got range 16 on her gun when she has fire group up. And so on the bottom of turn 1, when it's my first activation, I have Refuge on Karasloan. I can walk her forward 6, just get range on a single Stormlance, execute it, and then Refuge back 6 inches to be 100% safe.
Ooh.
So he thought he was just, he thought he was buying a turn, time walking me, when he actually just gave me a free Stormlance, which is a really big deal when you only have 5 of them.
Yeah.
So the following turn, he realizes that he's in a little bit of trouble. I safe passage the Adjudicator, which means he can't take chip shots with his Stormlance guns, and he can't afford to take a turn of advancing his Stormlances to kill my support units and take shots at them. So he has to figure out a way to do damage to the Adjudicator. So what he ends up doing, he throws Arcane Shield. He had Arcane Shield, up on the Stormlances, which obviously makes them kind of a nightmare to deal with. I was thinking that maybe he would have to throw Fortify and not put it on one of the Centurions, and kind of like he'd be kind of having a hard time deciding. But what he ends up doing is he puts Arcane Shield on the Stormlances, which brings their armor up to 20, and he runs to engage. So he has 4 Stormlances engage the Adjudicator, figuring that he can likely survive, and then run his Centurions in range so that if I spend the turn clearing the Stormlances with the Adjudicator, both Centurions will get charges on it, and he has a very good chance of one-rounding my Adjudicator, which is, again, how I lose the game.
Yeah.
What he didn't realize, I don't think he did the math, no disrespect to poor Matt, because he was a little surprised by how trivially easily Kara Sloan was able to kill those Storm Lances even though they were in combat. So I have to deal with four engaged Storm Lances against my Judicator, and I have to move my Judicator back 2 inches. Otherwise, those Centurions have charge lanes or charges. So no matter what, I knew at the worst case scenario, I was moving that Judicator back 2 inches. I would take free strikes if I had to, but I was going to try and clear the Storm Lances first. So I activate Kara Sloan. She feats, which means she gets 2 shots, and she aims. So she's base rat 8.
8.
So
Yeah,
under arming, she goes up to 10, and under Eye of Menos, she goes to 11. So even when they're engaged, I'm hitting those Storm Lances that are defense 13 on 6s. And because Kara Sloan is a good caster, I put Guided Fire, which means they're boosted 6s. So I don't know about you guys, but if I'm taking 2 shots and I need boosted 6s, I feel really good about those odds. Then she's a Weapon Master, and I can boost her attacks for 4 damage. Which gives me a glorious opportunity. I need, even though they are Arcane Shielded, Armor 20 with 5 boxes, I need a 13 on 4 dice, which is, what is it like? It's pretty good. Like, again, you could definitely see missing, but the odds are on averages that I kill a Storm Lance per shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I proceed to kill 2 Storm Lances almost trivially, very easily. I have Gaius and his bodyguards charge a 3rd one. So now the Storm Lancers are up to armor 22 because they have unyielding. But they're also being attacked by power strength 12 Weapon Masters on the charge. And so I managed to cut down that. Either you typically spike high or spike low. I spiked high on the first attack, kill that Storm Lance. And the Redeemer attached to Sevi 0 pulls out his power strength 15 mace, boosts damage on a hit, and 1 shot to the last one. So suddenly, he's down an entire unit of Storm Lances. He has no value. I move my Judicator back 2 inches and fire rockets, so now I'm out of threat range, and he's scrambling.
Yeah.
So he's lost attrition. He's lost the ability to beat the Judicator. The only thing he has left is the ability to beat me on scenario. So he effectively starts going for the scenario play. I won't bore you guys with the gory details, but long story short, even though he has an opportunity, you can't really let a Judicator fire turn without any sort of retaliation or threat and win a game. So the following turn, the Judicator moves 5 inches directly down the table, contests the middle zone where Amon was scoring as the sole piece in that table. So now he can no longer score that zone. I kill off his charger that was actually scoring 2 zones. I kill off his support units that can score the flag on my side of the map, and he has a journeyman warcaster who scores his flag, but then I am able to contest it with Rovin hiding in a forest. He has no realistic chance except to come in with Amon and one of the Centurions to try and take the Judicator. And again, as per usual, 2 pieces that are kind of hitting in the POW 14 to 15 range. In this case, Amon hits power strength 14. The Centurion hits power strength 18, I believe.
18, yeah.
Power strength 18, yeah. So even with synergy, they don't manage to kill the Judicator. And I'm given a very tricky choice between killing Amon with the Judicator or taking the sure thing and killing the Centurion. So I end up deciding to go for Amon. Actually, Matt goads me into it by telling me that I'm a bad player if I can't kill Amon. But Amon's still defense 16. And so even though the Judicator is Matt 6-7, you can still feasibly miss. And I actually missed my first attack into Amon.
Uh-oh.
And so now I'm doing the math. I'm going, okay, I've got potentially 4 more attacks in total. It's entirely possible that I could miss again. And even if I hit him on, it will take 1 to 2 attacks to kill him. And he's got tough and steady. So if Matt can roll a 5 or 2, and I don't kill him on, I get no value from my Adjudicator activation, he's now got him on, and that Centurion that gets a second round, and there's no way I survive it. So I pivot because I'm afraid of loose ends like that, and pound that Centurion to death instead of Amon, because it's much easier to hit at defense 11. And I'm left with just kind of Amon by himself on the map. And that's when I realize I can walk the Redeemer up. And even though Amon in combat is defense 20 and almost impossible to hit, I can get that Redeemer within 4 inches, so the scatters automatically hit Amon. and I'm able to kill him off with just blast damage at power strength 10, which felt really good because that was my plan. All 4 games was to kill Mon with power strength 10 blast damage, and I thought it wasn't going to happen.
So Judicator couldn't get done, but the little light.
It couldn't. The Judicator, I would say, ran 9.5 miles out of the 10-mile run, but he didn't quite cross the line. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Andrew. Second place last time. Well, enough of that. Time for first.
The real goal was beating Iain. So, I mean, round 3, I was kind of happy.
I love it. I love that. Be like, the real goal is beating this one guy. Be like, yeah, I'm good with that.
Well, here's the thing. Iain's got a really ugly mug. And the fact that I would have to look at 2 months in a row of it staring back at me on the winner's trophy was just too much.
You know what? I'm gonna make sure that there's somebody different other than me and you that make it to this next month. Then
I think you have to, because Brian clipped like the ugliest picture of me too. To be fair,
really? Oh, come on.
To be fair,
it's not flattering.
So end of the whole event here. So what are kind of like your thoughts looking back on it? Like, did you find that this was supposed to be a janky month, right? We go back and forth between competitive and like silly. Did you find this was like a silly, relaxing one? Was it a nice refresher? What did you kind of think of this whole format in general? Iain?
I thought it was fairly laid back. I took it as a laid back event. Like, I have two different when somebody's like, hey, I want to have a really competitive game, we're like, okay, do we want to have like a steamroller top table style competitive game, or do we want to have like a serious fun game? And most people were like, I want a little bit less than serious fun. I'm like, okay, let's get silly. Find some silly stuff and enjoy ourselves. Most of the people I played with were super clean players, so we could kind of joke around and banter back and forth and have a good time.
Most, huh? Thanks.
What's that?
Most, huh? Thanks, Iain. Get called out.
Hey, you know what, Andrew? When you say that I'm ugly, we'll get ugly. This is what happens. I hope that I play against Andrew again this month, because I really look forward to playing against his list. It'll be fun.
And Andrew, what are your thoughts on the format all together in the end?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought this was a great idea. Brian, I wouldn't have given it to you as a great idea before we started, but and not just because I won the thing. I thoroughly enjoyed all of my games. I did. I was actually quite disappointed.
I loved it because I won. I loved it. I love stepping over the corpses of my opponents.
My favorite. But I mean, honestly, I was actually a little disappointed when I played Iain third round and he was playing the same caster I'd played before. Like, I was really enjoying seeing
the odds, really.
Oh, sure, but I mean, seeing new casters is always a pleasure on the table, especially those casters that have been around for a while that you just don't get competitive play like we're used to. But then getting a chance to play and experience with them was extra cool. So I love that. And kind of like getting Berka, it was really fun with Chris. And I was like, I was kind of hoping for something like new and exciting again. Not that our game wasn't good, but like that novelty was really top notch. As far as the competitive level of the tournament, it was interesting. I think you've taught me some self-reflection, Brian, which I appreciate, because I don't think I can play any format of War Machine in a super casual way. I tried to do so a little bit in this, but like when we were actually playing the game on War Table, I looking for optimal plays, and I can't turn off that competitive part of my brain, I've found. But I'm also not looking for con level, not that I've ever attended a con, but like really intense, tight games where you're not going to have a friendly atmosphere. You're not going to give your opponent the benefit of the doubt. And so both of these tournaments, but this one in particular really hit that sweet spot for me, where I never once felt any of these games where my opponents were going to take advantage. I knew that if, I forgot something silly, I think at one point in my games, I forgot to allocate focus, like it was not a non-issue. Not only was it not an issue for Iain to give it to me, but I knew it wasn't an issue, which just takes a lot of the stress off. And given kind of the circumstances that we're all living through right now, knowing that I can play with friends and have great games and not have that kind of stress, this is the sweet spot. And so I really love the format. I love the tournament. You probably should ban huge bases if you ever go to 35 points again. But
just as a heads up, Mike Bessem apologizes that you didn't get to have post-CID Gary 1. Everybody else did get to actually play post-CID Gary 1. Brenton actually says that he loved the caster swap, and I'm sure that this is me paraphrasing. I'm sure he would love playing it again. And there's other people commenting about the Sloan and other formats that we should be playing in the future. Alec M. Luda said that we should do the Oblivion campaign in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna see how it goes. Like I kind of have something for every single month going through. As I said, going back and forth between competitive and like fun type thing. But I mean, it's gonna go until we can play in person. So we'll see how things gonna go with that. All right. Well, I guess we're kind of getting to the end of the hour here. So as we're wrapping up, Iain, where can we find all your stuff?
You guys can find me where you see my stream right now. YouTube.com/The Community Killer, Twitch.tv/Community Killer, Facebook.com/The Community Killer, and I also have Instagram and Twitter. They're not as widely used, but I plan on picking the activity up in those a little bit more. Thank you very much to my opponents. And Mr. Malorian, where can we find you?
Oh, you don't. So Andrew, also again, great to have you here on the show. I mean, you always bring such detail and depth to the understanding of what your games are all about. So congratulations again on your win, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. I was going to say you can find me nowhere, but you beat me to that joke, so I'm just going to trail off here.
Well, thank you very much again for the game, Andrew. Hopefully we'll see each other at week 4 of this month.
Yeah, we'll see. Take care.
All right. And just as a little aside here for all of our viewers, we should be doing another one coming up here with Mark talking about the CID. And then probably after that, who knows, maybe Andrew will be back. We'll be talking about our 49-point steamroller. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you later. Bye.
Have a good one, guys.